Good morning, good afternoon. It's noon. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm Desmond White with Together SC, and I am excited to be here with you all. And I am going to pass it over to Ms. Dennis, and we will get started.
Good. Thanks, Desmond. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all having a good day. I am Dennis Hughes. I'm with Find Great People, and I'm excited to spend the next little bit of time with all of you talking through remote teams and employee engagement. Wanted to just share a little bit about FGP very high level with you in case you're not familiar with us. We have really three different arms of our company: a people services component, which covers recruiting and staffing, so our people search division; our strategy and growth services, which covers strategic planning, program development for organizations working in conjunction with clients throughout the country. And then our culture and governance division, which is what I am a part of with our HR consulting line. And some of you may be familiar with Eleanor, who works with board governance, succession planning, and in conjunction with a lot of you. So very high level on FGP. We have brick and mortar in Greenville, Columbia, and Charleston, as well as Nashville. And I have been in the HR realm for all of my career and started with FGP in a consulting role about 8 years ago. And so I am excited that we're here today. We're excited to partner with Together SC for this series of webinars for all of you. It's a great practice as leaders to continually learn, especially as our working world and our world is changing so rapidly, and especially working and leading employees. We have two additional webinars that I just wanted to mention. The next one is measuring what counts, so a performance component for our nonprofit friends. That is on September 26th. And then my most memorable boss is on October 17th. And I know those will both be excellent webinars as well, being led by Carrie Kavanaugh and Paul Clark of our HR culture and governance division as well. So I am going to share some slides with you. Let's see if I can get this going. There we go. And because I know we have a limited time today, I want to go ahead and jump in and let's talk through remote work. Obviously, remote work is here to stay. In most cases, gone are the days of every employee being in an office every single day together. Whether you have 50% of employees who work remotely, 100% of employees who work remotely, there's probably some days where you don't know where an employee is going to be working from. Let's face it. There are hybrid schedules and all different types of challenges and remote work setups. And I would think that is why most of you are spending your lunch with me, because you have some form of remote work employees in your organization. And as leaders, we have all had to get creative to determine what remote work solutions might work for not only our employees, but our organizations. And so it's my goal as we spend the next little bit together is to share what might be useful and applicable ideas and thoughts and suggestions for you to be able to take back and implement with your remote work teams. We're obviously going to be talking about employee engagement and connection with those remote employees specifically. I have been a remote employee myself since many years pre-COVID. So you may hear me reference some of personal experiences. But I'm also going to talk about the benefits and challenges of remote work, building trust and rapport through open communication, promoting collaboration, remote cultures, and how do we build those when we're not all together. And then certainly strategies and examples for you. You'll see a 3 C's component here of communication, collaboration, and culture. And so I want to start with the benefits and challenges, and then the importance and impact of employee engagement in these remote teams. So to attract and retain top talent, remote work options are really a must for most, if not all, organizations. Obviously, remote work is not going to work in a manufacturing style setting, but where able, remote work is certainly important. Some of the benefits that remote work may include are obviously cost savings. That's not only for the company, but also the employee. And in addition, for the company, when you're able to offer remote work, you have access to more talent. Your talent pool broadens, and your recruiting efforts aren't limited to geographic boundaries when we're able to offer remote work. When it comes to challenges, communication is a major challenge, as you're not face to face every single day with each of these remote employees. Social isolation and lack of personal connectivity are also other challenges. We're going to talk a lot about that connectivity piece today. Employee distractions are often employers' concerns. Some managers, in talking with managers about being able to offer remote work, I have heard on a number of occasions how managers are concerned that the employee isn't always going to be at their desk to respond immediately because of the distractions. They might be taking care of household chores or other external distractions, and they can't keep their pulse on that employee and keep their eye on them. And I actually offer the contrary to managers in that conversation, and say, really, when employees' personal lives are caught up, if you would, they're actually more productive working remotely. They accomplish much more work in a shorter amount of time. And in some cases, much more so than an employee who is in the office with all of the distractions that occur in office settings. The flip side of that with remote work is the employee who can't put the work down because the work is always there. And I think that's an important piece as you're considering remote work, to understand what that remote work scenario and setup would look like for each individual. As employers, we don't want someone working around the clock, because obviously employee burnout happens much faster. So there's obviously benefits and challenges regardless of in office or not, but it's all about how we manage through these challenges as leaders. Employee engagement is exactly what it sounds like, and you all know this as leaders of your organization and with employees. The degree to which employees engage, feel passionate about, feel valued, and are committed to the organization. And more specifically, with remote employees feeling engaged with the team, their work, and the business. And so as leaders, whether they're remote or not, we want all employees to be engaged. Engaged employees foster open communication, not only with their managers, but also their peers. They're interested in staying informed on projects and keeping others informed along the way. They focus on daily tasks, but they also understand and think about how their work ties into the grand scheme of things. So they're looking at that big picture. They go above and beyond the goals that are set for them when employees are engaged. And remote employees feel engaged. They communicate career goals. They often refer friends for positions at their companies, and they have long tenures with the company when they are engaged. Um, so obviously this is the goal, right, of every employee. So how do we get there? And let's look at the building trust and fostering those meaningful connections with our remote employees. And it really starts from the beginning with onboarding. And actually, I would say it starts with your pre-boarding process and preparation. Being prepared, being thoroughly prepared. And this doesn't mean just having a computer ready on day one. It means truly thinking about how we set each of them up for success from day one. Who do they need to meet with? How do they understand the mission, vision, and values of the company? Talking through the onboarding strategy, the plan, having strong communication, setting expectations, all of that is to create that onboarding experience that doesn't just happen on day one. It continues week one, month one, first 30 days, 60, 90, and it continues so that they see the trust, they see that that communication and those expectations are set from the beginning. So as I said, we're setting them up for success. Creating a sense of purpose. So making their work matter to them, helping them understand the connection of their work to the company's mission, to your core values, communicating with remote employees about their work, their passion levels, their goals, any concerns that they might have, getting to know them as a person. It's really important to know what makes each one of your employees, whether they're remote or in person, jump out of bed each morning and want to exceed goals and go above and beyond for your organizations. When it comes to remote employees, why are they hopping out of bed and jumping out of bed and hopping on their computer? What excites them? What gets them fired up? What are their frustrations? So knowing that helps build that trust and those relationships. Establishing guidelines for remote work. This is all about walking through what are the work hours? What are your expectations for communication? What are the do's and don'ts that will get you fired up as a manager? Expectations for meetings. I will tell you, I was an HR component of a team meeting for an organization, and it was shocking to me that the entire team had their cameras off and they were all remote. And I thought, how can these folks be building this connectivity and these relationships if they can't see one another and they don't have the personal and human interaction and touch? So clearly stating what the expectations are for those meetings, as well as are there, establishing in-office days. Are there expectations that you expect for them to be in office? There might be hybrid schedules. And so really making all of that clear when you have someone in that remote work setting. Do they need to track their work or their time? What is, all of those guidelines need to be clearly communicated. Employees want the flexibility, they want hybrid schedules, but they also have to understand what the expectation is and how they must engage when they are remote to keep things moving forward. Setting clear expectations. So making sure that each team member understands their role and how it contributes to the success of your department, of your organization, and then also tying those tasks to the company's larger mission. Prioritizing when we think about our internal communication strategy, prioritizing remote employees in that, so that in communications with all employees, we think about it from the lens of the remote employee. Having intentional, regular check-ins with remote employees, and I think the biggest takeaway from here is the intentional connectivity. So it's not just about work all the time. As I mentioned a minute ago about getting to know them. For example, I have 2 meetings a month with my manager. One is specific to work. We talk about clients, we talk about projects, what type of support I might need. And it is work focused. The other one is truly personal. It is what's going on in life, what are the challenges, how they might be being brought into the workplace. And it really shows care and compassion. And it has built that trust and that relationship over the many years. And so it's not just about work all the time with these intentional check-ins with employees. When possible, being able to accommodate different employee working styles. Some prefer to work early wee morning hours. Some prefer nighttime hours. Some work school day hours because they have children in school, and that's when their house is the quietest when they're working remotely. So it's not possible all the time. Obviously, the remote employees also have to have crossover with employees who are in the office and be able to connect and work together. But understanding what's important to each employee and what keeps them motivated certainly helps build that trust and rapport with remote employees. And then overall, clear and transparent communication, so that they hear and see how things are impacting them in their work. The first of our C's here, communication. Communication is always in the top 3 for organization challenges. We conduct employee surveys on behalf of clients at FGP and in our HR consulting division, and communication is consistently a top 3. So communication in person is hard, but communication in a virtual setting is even harder. Maintaining that transparency. So tell them, they want to know. They want to know what's going on. It helps keep those of us who are remote engaged, and maintaining that transparency helps to build the trust that I was just speaking of. Frequent updates. It's important so that they know what's going on in the company, so that they know how they're doing from a performance perspective and where they are in relation to meeting goals. And what you have to ask yourself is, what works for your remote team? Is it daily? Is it weekly, bi-weekly, monthly? But making sure that communication is at the top of your list so that they feel that they are, that they, being the remote team, are continually updated and informed about things that are going on. Setting the clear expectations, as we talked about just a minute ago. But really, the accountability and follow-up piece is really important here. It is easy to lose sight of projects or goals if there aren't periodic check-ins. So planning for touching base and having those touch base conversations and how to handle this remotely is critical. The intentional interaction and collaboration, obviously, I mentioned that as individual employees, but this is also important for the whole company so that employees feel connected and a sense of belonging to something bigger. So it may be that you are working cross departments, and that is the connection and collaboration there, or it might be that other employees from other departments are assigned quote unquote buddies with remote employees so that there is that connection with remote employees. And then obviously informal check-ins, these, pulse checks, see what's going on from managers with employees. And the other piece I would mention here is leveraging tools to help you facilitate communication. And that I'm going to talk a little bit further about that as well in just a minute. But the second piece of our 3 C's is collaboration. And so when we think about encouraging and promoting collaboration and fostering that sense of belonging across the team, so that employees, don't feel like they're standing on an island alone. How do we do that? Through social connection? And this can be with our team meetings. How do you start a team meeting, right? How do we add a fun component to that? I have a client that when there is a new remote employee who starts, the remote employee introduces their in-house employees. So it's their pets. So the cat or the dog, is on the screen. Another client, they do show and tell, and they spend, a few employees each team meeting are identified for show and tell. And so it's just a component of not always focusing on the business and the work aspect. Offering that fun component in your team building pieces. How can you do team building with all remote employees? And so, I think back to, we had a bingo remote, it was a virtual session, and it was fun. We got all the kids involved and spouses if they wanted to be involved. And so really you have to think outside the box here when it comes to virtual activities and virtual team building. And then obviously taking full advantage of if you ever have all of those virtual employees in person. The other piece, the connectivity piece, I have a client that is 100% remote. They are all over the country. They have 3 meetings a week. Every employee is required to attend all 3 meetings. They start Monday, they start the week with what they call a stand-up meeting. They talk about the week, they talk about the work. Wednesday, they come together with a midweek, what they call cheers. And this is their connection point. It's not specific to work. It's sharing positives of the week. It's thanking coworkers or peers for good work, and non-business component piece here as well. And then they end the week on Friday with what the action items from the week that will carry over into the following week, and they forecast out the week, out the future week. So certainly thinking through, how does this work for your organization? The other piece here is opportunities for development. How do you offer that in a virtual setting? Maybe you don't have an organization where you have career progression and career paths. So thinking through, as the leader, how can you assign employees to work on projects together so that they continue to build their relationships as remote employees? But from that, they're growing, they're furthering their skills, they're adding tools to their toolbox, and you're providing cross training. So you've got backups in some cases, and really it's a win-win all the way around. The other piece is employees, maybe one is mentoring another. And so again, you have that knowledge transfer. There's all sorts of possibilities with development opportunities. And honestly, asking what they're interested in and what they would like to do is an important piece with remote employees as well. Our final C, creating a supportive and inclusive remote work culture that promotes employee well-being and engagement. Flexible scheduling, what says employee empowerment and engagement more than letting an employee choose their work schedule? Now, I know that they can't you can't always allow someone to choose their work schedule, but the flexibility piece is really a lot of employees can't put a dollar sign on the flexibility piece when it comes to working remotely. So being open, it doesn't mean that if you set it on day one that you can't change that. And I think that's an important piece as we manage remote employees. Having that open conversation and being willing to say, look, let's give it a 30-day try and see what works and what the challenges are, and let's revisit that. The virtual workouts, wellness incentives, competitions, things like that help to create that positive remote work culture. And mental health, this is really important. Mental health has gone from a top 10 utilization to a top 3 benefit spend for organizations. And so if you have not looked at your mental health support with regards to what you're able to offer and how that is incorporated with employees, I highly encourage you to look at that, because obviously we've all seen since COVID, mental health is so critical, and like remote work, that's not going anywhere. And so that's a great opportunity to be able to support employees from that perspective. The other piece I want to say is just that positive remote work culture is just how can you have an impact on those employees that you work with. It can be small things, it can be big things. I remember a couple of years ago, my manager, I work remotely in Spartanburg. I'm not always in the FGP office. My manager was in Spartanburg meeting with a client. She called and said, "Hey, are you at home?" Or are you with a client? And I said, "No, I'm working remotely. I'm here." She stopped by. She wasn't checking on me. She wasn't, making sure that I was working. She just wanted to have a quick 3-minute connection. We saw each other face to face. It showed compassion and concern for me as a person. It meant the world to me just that she was in my area and just connected with me. Again, no intention, but the connectivity piece of just saying, "Hey, how are you doing? Just wanted to make a connection with you while I'm here." So little things like that can go a long way. And the other piece is, when we look at remote employees, we need to ask for their feedback, and we need to listen to what their feedback is. Whether that is individually, whether it's with one-on-ones, whether it's through anonymous surveys, and then listen to what they're looking for, or what their feedback is. There might be positives that they want to continue, and so how do you ensure that those areas continue? But this all goes back to the transparent communication piece, and if we can't or won't implement some of their suggestions, we need to explain that why. I can't tell you how many times I've heard from an employee who's made a recommendation and the answer they receive is no, and that's all they receive. So explaining why the answer is no is really important, back to being fully transparent with them. Employee recognition, recognition programs. When it comes to identifying how we're going to recognize and appreciate employees, it's really important to know the employee's preference. If you haven't, I would highly recommend you read The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. It's an easy read. There's an assessment that employees can take, so their preference. There's many other opportunities like this, but knowing how employees prefer to be recognized is really important. Just some generational importances that I found interesting here. Baby boomers, they want the space to mentor. And what better for your organization to have that knowledge transfer? That is a recognition that baby boomers see of being able to mentor and share their experience and their knowledge with newer to the workforce employees. Gen X, this is the sandwich generation. They're sandwiched between raising their own children, but also taking care of aging parents. Flexibility is key to Gen X employees. Those individuals who are in this space, they can't put a dollar sign around the flexibility. And I'll say if we, as their leader and their current organization, if we can't figure that out, they will find someone else who will. They'll find another organization who will. So being open to that and thinking outside of the box. Millennials, they're the fastest growing generation, obviously, in the workforce. Keeping them engaged should be the top of mind. Remote work options are a must for millennials, along with internal communications and digitization. So not necessarily being fully remote, but having the flexibility similar to that of Gen X. And then Gen Z, they are most familiar with the digital world, so incorporating more communication, collaboration, and relationship building tools is critical. An example that I've seen is an interactive org chart, and it's very helpful way, easy way for new employees to the organization to become more familiar with the people of the company, and the intimate details of what's going on at the company, of knowing who's in charge of what program and what team. Gen Z, they also want feedback every few weeks, so that the communication and connectivity with them is very important. I think, hopefully all of you are celebrating the milestones, the birthdays, the anniversaries when employees have new babies. I hope those are givens, but if not, certainly a reminder. Implementing virtual recognition systems to acknowledge hard work and achievements, getting all team members of the habit in the habit of saying thank you, so that they're recognizing their peers. Employee spotlight is the old employee of the month, if you would. So certainly identifying and recognizing those individuals. And then, celebrating the big, the small, the mundane tasks and achievements of an entire team of specific individuals on our team is really important. And all of this does not come with a price tag necessarily. It does take time, obviously. One of the most impactful, recognition opportunities that all of you have, no matter the generation and who you're recognizing, is a handwritten note. Our CEO is fantastic at writing handwritten notes. I have several from throughout the years, and they just mean the most when you find that on your desk, or when it comes in your mailbox. There's no cost to that, and it's probably one of the most impactful things that you can do as a leader to recognize your employees. So strategies to strengthen employee engagement, and there's some collaboration tools that you may utilize as you look at implementing different strategies that might help from a remote employee engagement. I should have mentioned this in the beginning. These slides will be shared with you, so you'll have all of this. So you don't need to take all of this information on this slide down, but there's no exact science to measuring employee engagement. It looks and feels different for every company, every industry, and every single individual employee. But what we've got to start with is simply communication, collaboration, understanding employees, and creating that culture so that we get to know them and we know what keeps them motivated, productive, inspired, and engaged. So with that, I am happy to take questions if there are any questions from the participants. Happy to answer any questions, and then we'll pass it back over to the Together SC team once they are ready.
Dennis, we had a question in the chat.
Okay.
Um, Leah Crosby asked, what is an interactive org chart?
So it would be on your website so that employees can move through the org chart and see different the organization. So whether, and it doesn't have to be on your I don't want to say on your website because you don't want people getting that org chart and being able to recruit from your organization, but internally, so intranet, and them being able to see different parts of the organization, the people who are on the team, things like that. You can take it a variety of different ways, but you know, Gen Z really love to have all of that information, and even millennials at their fingertips.
Perfect. Thank you. Do we have any other questions before we close? All right, then in that case, I will pass it over to Elizabeth, our peer network, our operations peer network co-chair. Uh-oh, having some technical difficulties. I'm not super sure what is going on there, but if you enjoyed this topic, please feel free to come on back. We have two more series that are similar to this one, both hosted by four fine, great people. And if you enjoy topics like these, please feel free to join us over at the Operations Peer Network. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.